Hey guys, Phil here, hope you're well. What you're looking at in front of you is my sister's old laptop, and she donated it to me, and what I've decided to do is triple boot Windows on it. Why? Simple, compatibility. I want to be able to run old software, run old drivers, so I can do things like Xbox mods, Xbox 360 mods, run programs for those systems and a lot of old retro systems, be able to load old drivers that allow me to mod those types of old systems. So yeah, I decided to take this old laptop from my sister and triple boot it. So yeah, if you want to find out how I did that and you want to try it yourself, stick around. I'll show you how you do it. And guess what? It's actually easier than you think it is. Now, what I want to quickly talk about, guys, is what type of laptop I'm going to be using. This laptop is a fairly old laptop. Can't run Windows 11. Well, it can do if you fudge it, but it can't run Windows 11. But it will run Windows XP, it will run Windows 7, and it will run Windows 10 perfectly fine. Just a quick note, guys. If you've got a modern laptop, my advice is stay clear of doing triple boots on a modern laptop. The reason for that is, I'm not saying it can't be done, it probably can be done, but the issue you're going to run into is drivers. Trying to get drivers for Windows XP to work with your modern hardware is just simply not going to happen. So what you want to do is you want to get yourself a beat up laptop like this. Now this laptop originally came with Windows Vista on it. Just a quick background about this laptop. This laptop belonged to my sister, and obviously she's got a new one now, and she said I could have this, and I thought, yeah, that'd be a perfect candidate to do a triple boot on, because obviously this came with Windows Vista, and then obviously she upgraded to Windows 7 and then went to Windows 8 and then to Windows 10, and now she's got a brand new laptop, and I've got this one. But yeah, like I said, this one originally came with Windows Vista, and generally what you'll find is if you get a laptop that supports Windows Vista, you'll probably find that it supports Windows XP as well. Now the best thing to do if you want to know if a laptop will run XP as well is obviously get its model number and then do a search for chipset drivers, because if you find chipset drivers for a laptop and it supports Windows XP, you can pretty much guarantee you can go up through the levels to say Windows 7 and then to Windows 10. But yeah, this is one of those laptops. It does have chipset drivers for Windows XP, so I can triple boot this laptop. So yeah, I'm going to crack on with that right now. What I want to do now is talk about the different versions of Windows I'm going to be installing, and especially the order I'm going to be installing them in. Now if you take a look, these are the integral versions of Windows. Basically what that means is they've been updated to have the latest hot fixes, latest priority fixes already installed. So you won't really have to run Windows Update on something like Windows XP, because obviously Microsoft stopped supporting Windows XP many moons ago, and the same with Windows 7 as well. But what you can do if you want to, you can install Legacy Update for Windows XP and Windows 7. But what you'll find when you do that is there'll be no high priority updates, because they're already on the disk and already installed when you install Windows XP and Windows 7, so you're pretty much wasting your time. But yeah, these are the versions of Windows I'm going to be installing. So we've got Windows XP Pro. As you can see, it's the SP3, the final version of Windows XP Pro. We've got Windows 7 Ultimate, SP1, the final version of Windows 7 Ultimate. And finally, Windows 10 Pro 22H2, which is the final version of Windows 10, even though Microsoft are obviously still supporting Windows 10. Now what I want to do is talk about the order I'm going to install these in, and this is very critical when it comes to installing these. What you do is you work backwards. So what I mean by that is the first operating system I'm going to be installing is Windows XP. And then when I've got Windows XP installed, I'm going to install Windows 7. And then when I've got Windows 7 installed, I'm going to install Windows 10. Now the reason you do it in that order is because each time you install an operating system, that operating system's bootloader kicks in and takes over. So obviously when you install Windows XP, Windows XP's bootloader will start to obviously load Windows XP. Then when you come to install Windows 7, Windows 7's bootloader will take over and it will boot Windows 7 and Windows XP. And then when you come to install Windows 10, Windows 10's bootloader takes over and loads Windows 10, Windows 7 and Windows XP. Now, don't ask me how I find that out. I find that out the hard way. Trust me, it was a pain. If you do it in the opposite direction, what will happen is you'll install Windows 10, obviously. Windows 10 will have its bootloader. Then you'll have Windows 7, and guess what? Windows 7's bootloader takes over to load Windows 10. And then when you come to load Windows XP, it just f***s everything up because it's an old bootloader. So yeah, I can tell you from now, guys, from experience, start with Windows XP and then work your way up to Windows 10. But yeah, they're the versions of Windows I'm installing, and they're the order I'm going to install them in. What I've gone and done is I've gone out and purchased the cheapest SSD known to man. I'm just joking, guys. Yeah, it was pretty cheap, but you know what? After it breaks down, I'll have a backup of it anyway, so not really bothered. I just want to use it to triple boot this laptop. Now, a quick mention, guys. I'm not going to be doing anything special when it comes to this SSD. Pretty much all I'm going to do is create a master boot record. I'm going to partition the SSD into 4 partitions. We're going to format those partitions and start installing Windows. So yeah, I'm not going to be installing any GPT and installing Linux bootloaders or anything like that. No, it's just going to be plain and simple, and we're just going to use Windows bootloader to load the different versions of Windows. So yeah, why make things difficult, guys? Keep it nice and simple. I'm just going to use an MBR master boot record, 4 partitions, and we're just going to install Windows and let Windows bootloader do the work for us. First things first, let's install the cheapest SSD known to man into this laptop. So I'm going to take out the power cord, turn the laptop over, and another thing you should do whenever you're replacing components in a laptop is take out the battery. Just going to grab a screwdriver, and this is where the old drive lives. Now this already has an SSD drive in it, but it's one of the early generations, and it's only 120 gig, where I wanted the bigger one. In fact, this SSD, even though it's old, is made by a better manufacturer than that one. When I get it out, I'll show you this one. There we go, just get it out of its caddy. And as you can see, this one's made by Corsair. It's a Force GT. Some of the labels come off. If that was 256 gigabytes, I would have kept that one. But I wanted a larger SSD. Get this one out of the package. There you go, you can see. There's the new one I'm putting in. Guys, once I've got Windows up and running and everything, I'm going to image this SSD, basically make a drive backup, so if anything goes wrong, say drive fails in say 6 months, I've got the image, so I can always go and get a new one and restore it, and then I'm straight back up and running again. There we go. Long way. Slide it in. There we go. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. Slide the hard drive cover over the top and screw back in the screw retainer, and there we go. That's the new SSD installed. The laptop battery back in there. Grab the power cord, put that back in, put the laptop down, and that's it. We're ready to start partitioning the new SSD. I'll get my Hiren's BootCD and then I'll come back and start partitioning this drive. So now the cheapest SSD Known to man is installed in the laptop. What I want to do now is just talk about the partitions I'm going to create. You'll see me creating them later in the video, but I just want to go over what I'm creating. Obviously we're just going to use a simple master boot record disk, no GPT, nothing fancy or anything like that. We're just using bog standard master boot record. And I'll go through the partitions I'm going to set up. So the first partition will be for Windows 10 Pro, and it's going to be 40 gigabytes, and it's going to be a primary partition. The second partition will be for Windows 7 Ultimate, that'll be 30 gigabytes, and again that will be a primary partition. The third partition I'm going to set up is Windows XP Pro partition. That's going to be 20 gigabytes, and again it's going to be a primary partition. And the last partition is just going to be the rest of the drive. So once I've set these three up, whatever space is unallocated I'll just use that partition for files and things like that, and that's going to be a logical partition, and you'll find out why that's a logical partition later in the video. So yeah, they're the partitions that I'll be setting up on the new cheapest known to man SSD. What I want to do now is talk about the tools I'm going to be using to partition and format the SSD that we've just put in to the laptop. What I'm going to be using are programs that are contained on Hiren's BootCD. Now these are programs that are free. You can register them if you want to, but they're generally free to use. And like I said, they're contained on Hiren's BootCD, and it's contained on this USB stick. Now just a word of warning, guys. I had Windows 11 version on this Hiren's BootCD USB stick, and that didn't work with the laptop that I had. So what I had to do was put Windows 10 version of Hiren's BootCD onto this USB stick, and that worked perfectly fine. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to both versions just in case you run into a problem with the Windows 11 version. So yeah, I'm going to be using Hiren's BootCD, and yeah, I'll crack on with it. Okay guys, what I want to quickly do now is just apologize for this next portion of the video. The reason for that is the capture is not very good. You can see what I'm doing, but you know, it could have been better. And the problem with that, and why the capture is not very good, is this screen. You can see, hello, that's me. You can see it's one of those glossy screens, and it's just like a mirror. And it doesn't matter where you position the camera, you're going to get glare or reflection or something like that. So what I've had to do is set up my camera and sit there in the dark, literally in the dark, setting this thing up, and it's been an absolute pain. But yeah, I just wanted to apologize for that. I've installed the cheapest SSD known to man. I've got Hiren's BootCD already fired up. Now this is Hiren's BootCD Windows 10 version. Hopefully you can see that just here. I tried the Windows 11 version on this laptop. It didn't work, so I had to fall back to the Windows 10 version. But what I'll do is I'll put a link to both the Windows 10 version and the Windows 11 version of Hiren's BootCD. If you're having problems running the Windows 10 or 11 version. Now, because this is a brand new SSD, I shouldn't have to run a clean command, but I want to show you how you do that anyway, just in case you pick up a second-hand SSD from somewhere, or you know, a friend gives you one or something like that, and you want to use that. So I'm just going to show you how you clean the SSD and get it ready for partitioning. So I'm going to run a command prompt. Just move this down a little bit, and I'm going to write in to the window disk port, and give it a few seconds. As you can see, disk port has started up. Now I want to list the disks, and there we go. You can see I've got 3 disks, and I'll tell you what they are. The first disk is the new SSD I've just put in. Disk number 1 is, this has an inbuilt SD card reader, and that counts as a drive in this system. So it's seeing that SD card reader, but you can see it's got no media in it, so it's empty. And disk 2 is Hiren's BootCD, and I really don't want to mess that one up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type select disk 0, and that's select selected disk 0, the SSD in this system, and the next one I'm going to write is clean. And there we go. That's cleaned the SSD. Now it's ready to partition. What I want to do now is get the SSD all partitioned and formatted, ready to install the different versions of Windows on there. So I'm going to come up to this folder here called Utilities. I'm going to click on Hard Drive Tools and Disk Partition Tools, and I'm going to be running this program here, Aomi Partition Assistant. I think that's how you pronounce it, Aomi. I may have got that wrong. I do have problems speaking English. So I'm just going to run that program. And you can see both of those disks have popped up. So I'll just move that up there. Disk 2 is Hiren's BootCD. You can see that there. And disk 0 is the new SSD that I put in there, and you can see it's unallocated. So let's start making some partitions. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to select create partition. Now the first partition I want to be 40 gigabytes. This is going to be the Windows 10 partition, and you can see it's going to be labeled C. The file system is going to be NTFS. What I want to do next is go down to advanced just here, and I'm going to label it Win 10 Pro. I'm also going to make sure it's a primary partition, and another important bit of information you need is this down here. Because we're using an SSD, you need to make sure this is ticked, and it's basically SSD partition alignment optimized. So it's basically optimizing the partition for SSD. So I'm going to click OK. So that's the Windows 10 Pro partition made. I'm going to right click on the unallocated space again. I'm going to click create partition. Now you can see it's gone from C to F. Now you may be going, well, why is that? Why is it not gone C, D, E, F? Well, the problem there is I have a built-in DVD-ROM drive, and like I said before, I have a SD card reader that's built into the laptop, and they take up drive letters. So we've got C for Windows, and then we've got D, E, which is those two drives, and then obviously the next one we can have is F. So yeah, I'm going to create another partition. I'm going to create this size, and this is going to be 30 gigabytes. Drive letter is F, file system is NTFS. I'm going to click on advanced, and I'm going to rename this Win 7 Ultimate. Again, it's going to be a primary partition. You can see that here. Again, we want this tick here, so we're SSD optimized, and I'm going to click OK, and that's the Windows 7 partition made. Next, I'm going to create the Windows XP partition, so I'm going to click on unallocated again. I'm going to click there. Now this one's going to be 20 gigabytes, and again you can see we went from FG, and the file system is going to be NTFS. Click on advanced. I'm going to call this Win XP Pro, and again it's going to be a primary partition, and again it's going to be optimized for SSD. I'm going to click OK, and the final partition, I'm just going to take the rest and use it for file storage. And as you can see, it's already set everything up. But what I like to do is, just to make triple sure, is I like to grab this and pull it, and grab this and pull it. And then we've got the full allocation, and you can see the drive letter is going to be H, it's going to be NTFS, and I'm going to click on advanced. I'm going to call this files, and as you can see, it's created this one as a logical partition. Now the reason it's done that is you're only allowed 4 partitions, so it sets up the last partition as logical, because remember, you're only allowed 4 partitions. And as you can see, it's created a logical partition. Again, this one's set up for SSD alignment. I'm going to click OK. Now we've created the partitions. What I want to do now is format them. So quick and easy, I'm just going to right click on each partition, and I'm going to click format partition. Everything's set up for us, we don't have to do anything. I'm going to click OK. So that's that one. I'm going to go to the Windows Ultimate partition. I'm going to format, same again, everything's set up. OK. Windows XP partition, format, everything's set up. OK. And finally, the files partition, format, everything's set up, and everything's OK. So now everything's ready now, guys. Now the actual SSD has had no changes made to it. So if you make a mistake here, you can just close it and start again. What we need to do to make these changes permanent, these partitions, and format the drive permanent, is we need to go up here to this apply in the top left corner. So I'm just going to click apply, and it's just giving us the information of what it's going to carry out when we click the proceed button. So I'm going to click proceed. Are you sure? Yes. And just sit back and let the partition and format happen. Now it's not going to be a full format, it's just a quick format, but it's good enough to get us up and running so we can start installing Windows. And there we go, congratulations, all operations have been completed successfully. So there we go, we've partitioned and formatted the SSD. So if we go now into this computer icon up here, you can see there are all our drives ready to install Windows on. So now I've got the happy task of installing 3 different versions of Windows. Let's load Windows XP from the dark. Guys, I've had to film in the dark. The reason for that is because the glare on the screen is just insane. It's got one of those glossy screens, and it just shows everything like a mirror, and you can see everything behind me and everything. It's just a nightmare. So I'm going to have to film this in the dark, so I apologize for that. Now I've got Windows XP in the DVD-ROM drive. I'm going to power on the laptop, and hopefully the drive should spin up. And there we go, we're off and running, guys. And there we go, there's a spin up from the drive. And there's the famous Windows XP setup. The memories. Now the great thing about the integral version of Windows XP, which is what this is, it's had drivers added to it that weren't normally on the setup disk. So you shouldn't really run into any problems. One of the things it does have is 8 HCI drivers already installed, because normally what happens if you have 8 HCI and you're setting up an SSD on Windows XP and you use the original XP disk, it will blue screen on you and just won't set up. But this version has been patched for 8 HCI, so yeah, it should set up perfectly. Now this is where it would blue screen, because it wouldn't be able to load the drivers, but as you can see, because the drivers have been patched onto the disk, we can run Windows XP setup, not a problem. So yeah, I'm ready to install this, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press enter, and you can see the list of partitions that's ready to go. Now what I want to do is select the Windows XP, obviously, because that's what we set it up for. As you can see, we're going to go for the XP partition. Now we don't have to do any formatting or anything like that, because we've already set the partition up and we've already formatted it. So I'm just going to press enter. Now this is a very important thing you need to select here, guys. You want to select this, leave the current file system intact, no changes. And because we've already set it up, we don't have to do anything. And I'm just going to press enter. So now I'm going to sit back and relax and wait the 4 days. I'm just joking. And wait, it takes about 25 minutes to install Windows XP. So yeah, I'll let that get on with it, and then when it's finished I'll come back. And as you can see, that's Windows XP installed. Now I've not done any driver installs, I've not done any software installs, I've not done any settings or anything like that. I just want to get Windows XP up and running, and the same with the rest of the operating systems as well. I just want to get them up and running, because once I get this system to triple boot, I can always come back in and then start installing drivers and software and settings and everything like that. So yeah, we've got Windows XP installed. What I'm going to do now is open the drive, and I'm going to pop in the Windows 7 integral install disk, and I'm going to power off, restart, and we'll start installing Windows 7 Ultimate. Press any key to boot from DVD-ROM. Now what I'll do, guys, is I'll fast forward past this bit. It can take a little bit of time to load the files needed to install Windows 7. Okay, and we're ready to install Windows 7 Ultimate. So I'm going to change the time and currency, and keyboard is United Kingdom. Next, and what you want to do is click install now. Now this next bit, guys, is very important. Again, there's something you need to click, and I'll show you what you need to do. Okay, so you can see I've got two different versions of Windows 7 Ultimate. I'm going to choose the x86 version. The reason for that is it's more compatible with older programs, which is what I'm going to use in this laptop for. So I'm going to click next and accept the license agreement. And this is the important part, guys. You need to get this right. Do not click on upgrade. What you want to do is you want to click custom advanced, and then you can see our partitions have popped up again, like it did with Windows XP. So I'm going to click on the Windows 7 Ultimate partition. Now again, because it's already been set up, it's been formatted and partitioned and everything like that, you don't have to do any advanced options and format and everything like that. Everything's ready to go. So I'm just going to click on the Windows 7 Ultimate partition, click next, and sit back and let Windows 7 install. So again, what I'll do is I'll let Windows 7 install, and then when it's finished, I'll come back. And as you can see, that's Windows 7 installed. Again, I've not installed any drivers, any software, changed any settings or anything like that. I just want to get all 3 operating systems up and running, and then when I've got them triple booting, I can then go in and change drivers and programs and settings and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my Windows 10 disk into the DVD-ROM drive, shut the lid, restart, and start installing Windows 10. Press any key to boot from DVD-ROM. Again guys, I'll fast forward this bit because it takes a little bit of time for the setup files to get ready to install Windows 10. So I'll be back in a little second. Okay, and as you can see, we're in Windows 10 setup. So I'm going to choose time and currency, change that to UK, keyboard UK, next, and I'm going to click install now. Okay, it's asking me what version of Windows I want. You can see here Windows 10 Pro, that's the version I want. I'm going to click next, and again I'm going to agree to the software license, next. Now again guys, this is very important, like we did with Windows 7, you don't want to choose upgrade, you want to click on custom install. And again, you can see there's our partitions we set up before. Again, we don't have to do any formatting or partitioning or anything like that. It's already set up. So I'm just going to select on Windows 10 Pro, partition. I'm going to click next. And again, I'm just going to sit back and relax and let Windows 10 install. And then when it's finished, I'll come back. And there we have it. There's Windows 10 installed. What I want to do now is show you the boot options. So I'm going to shut down and restart the system, and you should see the Windows 10 bootloader pop up with the menu to select different versions of Windows to boot. And there we go. There's our different versions of Windows to boot. Now I'm going to be changing the names of these guys, and the reason for that is if you take a look, Windows XP comes up as earlier version of Windows. I don't like that. In fact, I'm going to be changing the name of all 3 of them. But before I do that, I want to do something very important. I want to back up the BCD, the boot configuration data, because now I've got this thing triple boot in Windows. I want to back up the boot information, BCD basically. So if I make a mistake anywhere later, I've got a backup of it and I can just restore it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to boot into Hiren's BootCD, and then I'm going to use the command line with BCD edit to back up the BCD data. As you can see, I've booted back into Hiren's BootCD. What I want to do now is back up the boot configuration data. Now again, I'll tell you what that is. That contains information like where Windows is, what drive it's on, what partition it's on. It also contains information for the bootloader and tells what different types of menus you've got. So like obviously you've got Windows 10, Windows 7, and that when it popped up earlier versions of Windows, things like that. And obviously contained in that is the path to Windows and everything. So what I want to do now is I want to back that up. The reason I want to back that up because I want to change those menu names. And if I make a mistake, I can always restore it. So I'm going to back that up right now, that BCD data. So I'm going to run a command prompt. I'm just going to move this down a little bit so you can see it better. There we go. And I'm going to write BCD edit / export, and then I'm going to type in where I'm going to export it to. So it's going to be D drive and BCD backup, and I'm just going to call it BCD backup. And there we go, press enter, and there we go, operation completed successfully. So now I've got a backup of the BCD, so if I make any mistakes from now on, I can always restore it. Now I've made that backup, what I want to do now is change the names of those menus that you saw, especially the Windows XP. It was called earlier version of Windows, and that's just not very nice. You want to get it properly renamed. So again, I'm going to write BCD edit, and I'm just going to take a look, and we'll take a look and see where Windows XP is. So if we move up, it's here, and you can see it comes up as a Windows legacy operating system, and its identifier is NTLDR. Whenever you're changing a setting, you'll need to input the identifier. Now because I'm using Windows 10, when you're using command prompt, you can actually copy and paste in the command prompt now. So I'm going to Control C. There we go, that's copied it now. All I'll have to do now is paste it, and you can see if you look under its description here, you can see it's earlier version of Windows, and that's what I want to change. I want to change it to Windows XP, so that menu looks nice. So I'm going to come down back to the command line, and I'm going to write BCD edit /set, and we need to Control V in the identifier, which was NTLDR. Then I'm going to write the description, and then I'm going to name it. So I'm going to call this Windows XP Pro, and I'm going to put the service pack in there as well. So it's SP3, and there we go. And when I press enter, it should hopefully, fingers crossed, tell me that the operation is successful. And there we go, operation completed successful. Now if I go in there again and we go BCD edit, and we take a look now, we move up to the NTLDR description, we can see it's now called Windows XP Pro SP3. So that's what will be displayed in that boot menu. Now what I want to do now is I also want to do the same for Windows 10 and Windows 7, because I want to put the version, so like Ultimate, and I want to put the service pack number or the actual version of Windows in them. So again, I'm going to look for Windows 10, and the easiest thing to do is look for the description, and you can see it here. This is description for Windows 10, it's just Windows 10. Now the identifier for Windows 10 is default, Now the reason it's default is because that's the bootloader. We're using Windows 10 bootloader and it will always come up as default. Sometimes it can be called current, but most of the time if you're using Hiren's BootCD, it will come up as default. So again, I'm going to Control C. Now if you remember, I've already got the command all written out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of the old XP identifier. I'm going to paste in the Windows 10 identifier, which is default. Then I'm going to change the description. So I'm going to call it Windows 10 Pro, and I'm going to put the version number, which is 22H2, which is the final version of Windows 10. And I'm going to press enter, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it should change the description. There we go, operation complete successfully. So again, I'm going to put BootCD edit, and we'll take a look at the Windows 10 identifier. If you remember, it was default, it's here. And if we take a look at the description now, it's now called Windows 10 Pro and the 22H2 with a version number in it. Now again, I want to do the same again, but this time with Windows 7. Now if you look at the identifier for Windows 7 here, we can tell it's Windows 7 because we just look at the description, it says Windows 7. We look at the identifier, it's got a great big long string there. I don't know why it does this for Windows 7. It's just one of those quirks of old operating systems, guys. But again, all I'm going to do is copy the identifier for Windows 7. I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to change from the Windows 10 identifier, which was default. I'm going to copy and paste in the Windows 7, and I'm going to change the description to Windows 7 Ultimate, and it is SP1. There we go. Hopefully again, when we press enter, that description gets changed. So let's press enter. Operation completed successfully. Let's BootCD edit and see, and let's go through all of them. So here's our identifier for Windows XP, and you can see the description is Windows XP Pro. We go down to the identifier, which is default for Windows 10. You can see the description is Windows 10 Pro 22H2. And if we move down to the identifier for Windows 7, we can see the description is Windows 7 Ultimate SP1. So now when we boot, we should see those descriptions in the boot menu instead of the earlier versions of Windows and just saying Windows 10 and Windows 7. We should have the full name for Windows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the flash containing Hiren's BootCD, and I'm going to restart, and hopefully we will see those descriptions in the menu options looking really nice now. There's our Windows bootloader, and there we go. You can see we got the proper names now: Windows 10 Pro 22H2, Windows XP Pro SP3, and Windows 7 Ultimate SP1, and that's the names changed. What I want to do now is I'm going to boot back into Hiren's BootCD, and I'm going to change the boot order, because obviously I want Windows 10 to be first, I want Windows 7 to be where Windows XP is, and I want Windows XP to be down here at the bottom. So again, I'm going to boot into Hiren's BootCD, and then when I've done that, I'll come back and change the boot order. As you can see, I'm back into Hiren's BootCD. What I want to do now is change that boot order that was in the bootloader for Windows 10. Obviously it was Windows 10 and then went Windows XP, and then Windows 7. I want to swap that around and get them into order. So again, I'm going to run a command prompt and we're going to use BCD edit. I'll just move that down a little bit to there. And to do this, it's very easy. What you need to do first is write BCD edit, because you need to get the identifiers again, so it's best just to do this. Then what you do is you write BCD edit / and it's display order. And what you want to do then is you want to put the order you want the boot menu to be in. So obviously I want it to be Windows 10, Windows 7, and then Windows XP. So to do that, all I have to do is copy the identifier from each system in order I want. So if you remember, Windows 10's identifier is default, or it could be current depending on which version you're using, but it's generally default if you're using Hiren's BootCD. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste that into the bottom just there, and space. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the Windows 7 identifier, which is here. You can see it just there. So I'm going to copy that and there, Control C, and again I'm going to paste that in there, space, and finally I want the Windows XP identifier, which is this one here, NT LDR. So I'm going to copy that, Control C, and move down and paste it in. And when I press enter, hopefully everything's okay. And there we go. Operation completed successfully. Now if we go BCD edit again and we take a look now, we can see they should be in the order. So we take a look, we identify default, which we know is Windows 10. You can see that's the first one. If we move down to the next one, identify that big long string, we know that's Windows 7. We can see the description here. So that will be the middle one. And the final one this time will be Windows XP, and we can see the identifier for it, NTLDR, and it's Windows XP Pro. So now we should have our menus in the correct order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart, and we'll take a look at Windows 10's bootloader, and it should have those menus in the correct order now. Okay, and in a second we should see Windows 10's bootloader, and hopefully those menus will be in the correct order, and as you can see they are. Just move the key down a bit so it doesn't auto start, and you can see Windows 10 Pro 22H2, and our next one is Windows 7 Ultimate SP1, and then our final one is Windows XP Pro SP3, and they're all in the correct order. So what I'm going to do now is I've got them all set up. I'm going to boot Windows XP, because what I need to do now is go through each operating system, install drivers, programs, and change settings and all that good stuff. And yeah, and look how quick Windows XP started. That's insane. So yeah, I'm gonna go through them now, guys. Now I've got everything set up and everything's working. I'm gonna go through each version of Windows, install drivers, install programs, change settings, and that's that type of good stuff. And when I've finished, I'll come back. And as you can see, that's Windows XP all set up, drivers installed, programs installed, settings all set up. So now what I've got to do is do exactly the same for Windows 7. So Windows XP is all sorted and ready to go. What I need to do now is the same for Windows 7. I'm going to install drivers, software, and change settings. And when everything's all done, I'll come back. And as you can see, that's Windows 7 all set up. Drivers are installed, programs are installed, and the settings are all set up. So yeah, what I've got to do now is do exactly the same for Windows 10. And boy, is this getting a bit tedious. That's Windows XP and Windows 7 all sorted. What I have to do now is exactly the same. I'm going to go through Windows 10, install drivers, install programs, change settings, that type of thing. And then when I've done, I'll come back. And as you can see, there's Windows 10 all set up. Drivers installed, programs installed, and settings. So yeah, we go. We got 3 versions of Windows on this laptop. So what I'll do is let's go through them. So let's shut down and restart Windows 10, and then we'll reboot Windows 10 from the menu. And there's our Windows 10 bootloader, and you can see, guys, it's got a 30-second countdown. So once it gets down to 30 seconds, it will automatically boot Windows 10. But I'm going to select Windows 10, and it should boot Windows 10, fingers crossed. And there we go. There's our Windows 10. Now if I go to this PC and right click on it, and I go home, go down to updates and security, and we go click on activation and give it a few seconds. And there you go, you can see Edition, Windows 10 Pro, activation, Windows is activated with a digital license. So there you go, that's Windows 10. Let's shut Windows 10 down and we'll boot into Windows 7. Select Windows 7 and it will do a reboot, but this time it will load Windows 7 instead of the bootloader. And there we go. There's Windows 7. Now if I click on the computer icon, right click and press properties, you can see it's Windows 7 Ultimate Service Pack 1. If I move down, you can see Windows is activated and we've got the genuine logo. So yeah, that's Windows 7. Let's shut down Windows 7 and now boot Windows XP. And there's Windows 10's bootloader. We'll move down to Windows XP. We'll select that. The system will reboot again, but obviously it won't load the bootloader. It will load Windows XP. Oh, that old Windows XP boot up sound. It never gets old. It just, the nostalgia just comes back when you hear it. But there you go, guys. There's Windows XP booted. So yeah, it's 3 versions of Windows on one laptop. And if I go to my computer and we click properties, you can see it's Microsoft Windows XP Professional Service Pack 3, and everything's really good. So yeah, this thing now is a retro powerhouse. When it comes to running old software, it's pretty much going to be compatible in it, having 3 different versions of Windows on it. But yeah, really chuffed, guys. 3 different versions of Windows. No retro system is safe. Not now. I can run retro software on this and run it in its proper environment that it was designed for. Yeah, you better watch out, you retro systems. And as you can see, I booted back into Windows 10. And you can see the glare, hello, on the monitor that I was talking about. And I can't stand monitors that have this glossy finish. If you take a look at my monitor that I use for repairing and everything, it's got a glossy finish and you can't see any really bad reflections in there. But if you take a look at this one, it's just Reflection City. And that's the only thing that lets this laptop down, is that glossy monitor. And that's why I had to record it with the lights out and everything, because forget about recording it like this. It would look absolutely horrible. But yeah, we're triple booting this laptop. What I want to do now is talk about why I did this. The real reason I did this was mainly for compatibility. There's a lot of old programs I use, and those old programs load old drivers. And if you're using a modern laptop, you know, something with secure boot or something like that, there are ways around to get those old drivers and that old software to work. You can run it in compatibility mode, but it's not really true environment of what, you know, the operating system was in the day when that program was designed. And it's fudging it to an extent. But yeah, the problem you'll run into is the drivers for that system, for that piece of hardware, is because, like I said, the problem you'll run into is secure boot, especially with a modern laptop or modern PC, because to get old drivers to work that worked on Windows 7, you'll have to disable driver signature, and to do that you have to disable secure boot, because you can't disable driver signature and have secure boot enabled at the same time. So yeah, the hoops you have to jump through just to get old equipment to work on a modern operating system is a pain in the backside, and it's the reason why I created this laptop, to triple boot, so I can load older stuff with Windows XP and use drivers and things like that, and obviously I can do the mid stuff with Windows 7 and load the drivers, and then obviously if I want to do modern stuff I've got Windows 10 that I can use. So yeah, that's the reason why I created the triple boot for this laptop. So yeah, there you go guys. Triple booting Windows, Windows XP, Windows 7 and Windows 10 for fantastic compatibility. So yeah, I hope you liked the video guys. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff, and as always I'll catch you on the next one. Winner. Triple booting Windows. Catch you next time guys.